In this episode, we're exploring how trauma can sometimes travel across generations and how resilience can as well. We'll take a closer look at concepts like adverse childhood experiences, also known as ACEs, epigenetics, and discuss how early life experience can influence the way we respond to stress, build relationships, and navigate challenges later in life. Most importantly, we'll talk about how to recognize these patterns and how they can help us make intentional choices that promote healing, growth, and resilience for ourselves and future generations. Hello, and welcome back to Stay Mindful with Dr. Evelyn Davis. I am Dr. Evelyn Davis, and today we're going to have a conversation that is both scientific and also deeply personal because we are talking about trauma and not just about individual trauma, but how it also shapes families across generations. But we're not going to stop there. We're going to explore resilience and how that also travels through family, shaping environments, relationships, and also outcomes. In this episode, we're going to be exploring what science, psychology, and lived experience tells us about generational patterns, and more importantly, how we can begin to shift them in intentional and also meaningful ways. So let's start with something called ACEs. And for those who are not familiar with that term, ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. These include experiences such as exposure to domestic violence, substance abuse, things that happen within the home when you're growing up. It can also be exposure to emotional neglect, parental incarceration, having chronic instability, or even growing up in an environment where safety felt uncertain. Research shows us that the more ACEs a person experiences, the higher risk for challenges in their life. This is including anxiety, depression, substance abuse, even chronic illness, and difficulty with regulating your emotions. But here's why that is important. ACEs are an indicator of risk, but they are not predictors of destiny. They can help explain patterns, but they don't define your future. Understanding ACEs helps us to expand our collective awareness of how early experiences influence long-term well-being. And it also helps communities to identify ways to prevent adversity and also strengthen resilience. One of the visual tools that is often used to explain this is called pair of aces tree. So imagine that you see a big old tree, and this model it begins to illustrate how adversity can grow from both personal experiences, but also broader community conditions such as poverty, discrimination, or violence. But the model also reminds us that resilience can also grow when individuals and communities use intentionality to create supportive environments. So, just to throw a little research in there, public health research highlights several strategies that can help prevent or reduce the impact of ACEs. And these include strengthening economic supports for families, promoting social norms that protect against family violence or just violence in general and adversity, ensuring a strong start for children. So putting those enrichment services and one of the reasons why pre-K was invented to help kids have that strong start. Also teaching coping skills in life, connecting youth to caring adults and supportive activities, and intervening early to lessen immediate and long-term harm. So when you see all of these community resources that are being put in place that help kids, those are the efforts that are being made to decrease the impact of ACEs in those children's lives so that they can grow up to be adults that are healthy and have that resilience. When we understand ACEs, we move simply from recognizing trauma to actively building environments that support healing. So, as we continue this conversation, I invite you to reflect on your own experiences, or even consider how you might support someone else who could benefit from understanding these concepts. And in next week's mini episode, we'll take a deeper dive into exploring practical ways to strengthen resilience, but then also looking deeper into ACEs as well. Now let's shift to another key concept, which is epigenetics. And I know it sounds complex, but there's a simple way of thinking about it. It's our genes being able to provide the blueprint for who we are as people, but our environment can influence how that blueprint is expressed. Kind of like an episode about twins, where although they look very alike, their lives are drastically different. Think of sister, how you have one that's growing up in this area, and then you have the other one growing up in this area. Like they look alike, but at the same time, they're different. So that's because our environment and the people we encounter shape who we are consciously and also subconsciously. Just to build upon that, think about chronic stress, trauma, and ongoing adversity, how that can impact our stress responses. These stress responses influence our behavior, our ability to regulate our emotions, and then also our physical health. In some cases, these patterns can start to also influence the next generation, not just through learned behavior, but also through biological stress responses. And if you're a parent like me, your mind is probably going in a whirlwind and you're probably wondering how you screwed your child up. But be not dismayed, because this is not the end, but the beginning. Because what you choose to do moving forward truly matters for you and then also for your kids. While researching this episode, I actually came across an article called Intergenerational Transmission of Trauma by Fabiana Franco. It allowed me to expand my thoughts on this idea. This article explains that when individuals experience traumatic events, effects of those experiences tend to extend beyond their own lifetime and influence their descendants in ways that are long lasting and unexpected. We think about this when we think about the impacts of slavery, Jim Crow. A lot of those feelings are passed down through generations. Although we have not experienced slavery, the impacts of that time deeply affect the African American community. It does. Whether some of us like to admit it or not, it does. And this is where we refer to as intergenerational trauma, or what people of faith may call generational curses, because they're like the movie Encanto. I think the movie Encanto definitely is a movie that shows intergenerational trauma. We saw with the grandmother who experienced that violence and then built this whole community to protect her family. It went as far as nobody can leave, and that was to protect them, and it created that anxiety within the family. And we started to see that manifest when we started to see the house crumble. So I feel like that is a great representation of that intergenerational trauma coming to life through film. Sometimes that transmission can happen through family dynamics, which we saw, and then it can also be learned behaviors such as parenting styles, emotional communication, and how stress is even managed in the home. But trauma can also affect our biological stress systems. Our bodies rely on a stress response system that helps us to respond to danger. The hormones like cortisol activate the fight or flight response, helping us to stay alert. And then also, I would like to highlight that there are other ways. We have the fight, flight, which are the most common response to stress. And then we also have the fawn, and freeze. All of those help us to stay alert and then also help us to react to stress. When the system is functioning in a way that it should, cortisol activates the response and eventually helps the body to return to that state of balance. But when someone experiences repeated, prolonged stress, the system can become dysregulated. And when this happens, the effect can ripple across many areas of life, including emotional regulation, cognition, your immune function, your metabolism, and just your overall health in general. Understanding this doesn't mean that we're stuck, though. Understanding this helps us to understand why certain patterns may exist. And when we understand the patterns, we can respond differently. With that understanding, let's consider why family patterns seem so persistent. I know that there are a lot of things in life that we grow up seeing when we're younger and we say, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to repeat what I saw growing up. And yet, under stress, we find ourselves reacting in those familiar ways. And why is that? And it's because what we grew up seeing becomes normal. It becomes a survival strategy that gets passed down from generation to generation. And emotional regulation is modeled or it isn't. And sometimes even the way that we regulate our emotion can be either maladaptive or adaptive to the situation. We put on that mask that allows us to smile and get from point to point. But silence around hard things becomes the default. We don't talk about it. Just like we don't talk about Bruno. And sometimes, oh, that is a great representation of that. We don't talk about Bruno. Isn't that something? But sometimes the repetition is not intentional. It's the inherited coping that we face in those situations. And when we understand that, we can begin to approach ourselves with compassion instead of criticism. And we also open ourselves up to so many new ways of coping with stress and just life itself. Knowing these cycles repeat also brings us to my next question. How do we interrupt that? And it starts first with naming the pattern. Because when you're able to recognize unhealthy family dynamics, you can shift the trajectory. Instead of yelling, we want to take the time to discuss the problem and not avoid the tough conversations. And at the same time, we also remember to establish clear boundaries. This is especially important between partners and also between parents and their children, because it's important even when you are establishing healthy dynamics that you're also making sure that those clear boundaries are there. Also, you want to notice your triggers, whether you're dealing with life highs or lows or navigating different chapters in life. Stress is unavoidable. And the reason why I say that is because even excitement can be stressful. You know, when you ever feel that adrenaline rush when you feel excited about something, that's a form of stress. That nervousness when you're about to win an award or speak in front of a crowd, that is stress. But how you respond to it makes all the difference, because it could be a way that you respond to it. You're able to calm yourself down. You're able to talk yourself through it. Or it could be a thing that you end up throwing up or passing out. So that's why it's important to respond to it in a way that is more helpful for you. To support this, learn emotional regulation skills. Begin by learning deep breathing. That's usually where I start with when I have my clients. I start with deep breathing techniques and also applying problem-solving strategies to manage stress. These tools can create that moment of pause and also help you to respond thoughtfully rather than reacting automatically. Finally, seek therapy or a trusted support. I am a strong advocate for both therapy and also spiritual growth through a relationship with God because therapy helps you build valuable skills while faith helps you to see beyond your current situation and gain a deeper perspective and understanding. Through using all of these things together, you may start to find opportunities to choose to repair relationships or find ways to repair yourself instead of avoiding. And when repair is not possible, forgiveness can still be a part of healing, but forgiveness doesn't require you to continue to expose yourself to harm. Sometimes healing means forgiving while also maintaining clear, healthy boundaries to protect your well-being. Before going further, I want to clarify that breaking cycles means making intentional changes to improve. That's not blaming or condemning parents or even caretakers. One thing I remind my clients often is that you can't give what you don't have. And when you know better, you do better. And as a parent myself, I personally struggle with this under the pressure to do better than what my parents did. But that way of thinking does not even acknowledge what they gave me. In fact, having the do better mentality can often feel like when you try to do better, you end up repeating the same cycles as your parent and sometimes end up creating a worse version of it. So, full transparency moment. I know a lot of people who grew up with what is dubbed as Black People Saturday. Maybe people of other cultures and races call it something else, but it's basically cleanup day. For those who don't know, imagine this. Sicily, 1920. Just playing. But imagine being awakened by music playing on the radio, some gospel, maybe a little bit of blues. Whatever it was, you knew from that moment that it was time to clean up. I mean, it was the deepest of the deepest cleans on that day. And I can even remember as early as the age of 5 making a bed, trying to jump up as I stretched the fitted sheet over the edge, which, might I add, is still a pain to this day. Now, I can imagine hearing that story, you're probably thinking to yourself, that does not sound traumatic at all. And it wasn't. It taught me a lot. It taught me to be responsible. It taught me to take care of my space. But what was traumatic to me was the responsibility to make sure that my siblings did chores, that they ate dinner, that they took baths, that the house was cleaned up. When they got in trouble, I got in trouble. And when I got in trouble, I got in trouble, along with not feeling heard and feeling alone. And you may hear that still thinking that doesn't sound that bad. Everybody has had to help their parents out. And I get it. I definitely get it. And you're not wrong. There was nothing wrong with me being asked to do those things. But when I think back on it and I look at how it has affected my parenting today, there was some intergenerational trauma brought on by that. To this day, I still feel the burden and the responsibility to my sisters. And we're adults. Now, I have worked through some of that, but there's definitely some more work that needs to be done. Just to give you some more context, as my family grew, these experiences shaped how I approach parenting. I became a little bit more laxed about Black People Saturday, doing most of the cleaning because it was quote unquote therapeutic to me. And because I didn't want my kids to feel solely responsible for our house. I just wanted them to, or I want them rather, to handle their own areas. And of course, with age, more responsibilities come. I pride myself on teaching my kids to be siblings and to support each other and not to become co-parents. They also learn words of self-expression, though I'm still working on this because we are headed into the teen ages. So pray for me, parents of teens. Um, but my ultimate goal was wanting them to enjoy childhood. Me being a teen at one point in time, I know that can be confusing all by itself. I wanted to prepare them for life because I know that one day they will have roommates and other people in their spaces. They will have to communicate with others and they will need to know how to maintain their own lives. And I see many of my friends adopting this approach too, but with their own personal twists, as do my siblings. And a lot of things that we had to grow up doing, like caring for our siblings, some people working jobs while in school, are things that our kids don't have to do because we're not in the same financial position as our parents. I know a lot of my friends grew up as latchkey kids, and that's pretty much you're coming home and you're taking care of yourself until your parent gets home from work. But with that experience, now we're more aware of how certain things can impact kids emotionally. But at the same time, a lot of the work ethic and tough skin that we developed, not a lot of them have because society teaches them on TikTok and Instagram because that's where they are most of the time, just letting you parents out there know. They don't have to. Society teaches them that they don't have to endure the same things that we did, which is very empowering. I don't want to take that from it. It's very empowering that they know that, but it's also risky because the world, unfortunately, does not always care about what is fair or even your feelings. But with that newfound awareness comes the ability to recognize what doesn't serve you and the choice to do something different. Breaking cycles is not condemnation. Breaking cycles is about making intentional choices as you move forward. So, having discussed breaking negative cycles, I want to now turn to resilience because if trauma can travel across generations, resilience can too. Research shows that resilience is supported by several key psychosocial factors, including optimism, cognitive flexibility or the ability to adapt your thinking, active coping skills, supportive social relationships, paying attention to physical well being, and also having a personal value system or moral compass that guides your decisions. These factors help individuals grow, adapt, and respond effectively to adversity. And they are just as important for both adults and children to learn and to practice. Tools like CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy can also help strengthen resilience. CBT focuses on practical skills that help individuals and families respond to stress in healthier ways, such as reframing negative thinking by challenging automatic unhelpful thoughts and replacing them with more balanced perspectives. Like instead of catastrophizing, we learn to approach challenges with optimism and also use a problem solving mindset. It also helps you to strengthen problem solving skills by addressing challenges directly and breaking them into manageable steps. You also learn to enhance emotional regulation by understanding how thoughts influence feelings and use techniques like mindfulness and relaxation to manage intense emotions. Building confidence through action allows you to encourage small intentional steps towards goals and reinforcing the belief that change and growth are possible. These are skills that families benefit from in learning and practicing together. And oftentimes, resilience begins when one person is deciding that the pattern stops with them. As we near the end of this episode, let's take a mindful moment before closing, because I know I need it. And ask yourself, what patterns have I inherited? Which ones serve me? Which ones am I ready to release? And what does resilient look like in my family moving forward? Take a moment to reflect on these questions. This isn't a moment for blame. There's no shame in what you're feeling in this moment. There's just clarity. And when we have clarity, it creates choice in what we do next. If today's episode resonated with you, I want you to make sure that you listen to next week's mini episode for practical coping skills and trauma-informed resources that you can use. Mark your calendar so you don't miss it. And if you found value in this discussion, please share this episode with someone who could benefit from it. Start a conversation together about breaking cycles or building resilience, because your action and even initiating that conversation can make a big difference. Remember, you are not responsible for what you inherited, but I hope you feel empowered to build the next steps and shift into a new future. Until next time, stay mindful. Thank you for listening to Stay Mindful with Dr. Evelyn Davis. You can follow the podcast on Podbean, Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. And if today's episode helped you, leave a review or share it with someone who could use it. Until next time, stay mindful.